Hey folks, David Stewart here. Han shot first. Not only did Han shoot first, but he was perfectly reasonable in shooting first, and it was important that he shoot first, and it doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't shoot first. But why do fans seem to care so much about who shot first in this Han versus Greedo cantina scene? Why does this matter to fans? So I'd like to break it down and give a couple of reasons. The first one has to do with a general attitude towards altering art after the fact. And I think this is actually the lesser of the two reasons that I'm going to describe here. So altering the art after the fact, 20 years after the release of the original Star Wars, George Lucas came out with the special editions, which were kind of lukewarm received. I remember being very excited about them when they came out and being less excited about the way some of the things looked when I watched the movie. And part of that was that the CG, the computer generated things that were placed into the movie, didn't quite fit well with the film style that was actually executed in the 70s and 80s. So things looked out of place. They looked odd. There is a general attitude, though, that you shouldn't alter the art after the fact, that the art should be what it is. I tend to have a little bit more of a pliant attitude with that. We've had lots of different cuts of, say, Blade Runner or, Highlander 2 or something like that, that have attempted to make the movie more of what the original auteur intended it to be. And indeed, George Lucas's attitude towards the special editions, besides hyping people up for the release of Episode 1, was to make it closer to his original vision, which was limited during production. And I think that explains the addition of the Jabba the Hutt scene in the very first Star Wars movie, which I think was just awful. I think it would be better that was left on the cutting room floor, but George had intended that to be in the movie, and so I think he maybe had some kind of compelling reason to put the thing in the movie that he really wanted to be in the movie from the get-go. And I could talk about that scene another time. In fact, I have talked about that scene. But Han shooting first, well, this matters to fans because of the more important second reason, besides the fact that it's an alteration of the original execution of the art that everyone loved. But it also changes Han Solo's character and changes fundamentally our perception of it, even though it happens very fast. And when I watched it in theaters back, I think in 1997, when they did the special editions, I didn't notice that they changed anything other than I thought I saw more of the scene. Because in the original, Han shoots from under the table and you just see an explosion and Greedo falls over dead. You don't see a blaster bolt or anything like that, because that would have been an extra effects shot, a little bit more than what they needed to do. So I didn't really notice who was shooting where, and it kind of became a meme after the fact. But George Lucas has explained that he's like, people wanted Han Solo to be a cold-blooded killer, but he isn't. But I say it's actually completely reasonable for Han Solo to actually shoot first. If somebody has a gun leveled at your face, it's perfectly reasonable to shoot that person. Because when they're leveling that gun at your face, they're saying, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to make you do something. It's like your money or your life, or your money and your life. I'm going to make you do something bad and probably kill you anyway. In fact, Greedo kind of says that. He says, that's the idea. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. It's basically saying, I'm going to kill you, or, I'm going to bring you to Jabba, who's going to kill you. So you're facing death. It's totally reasonable to shoot first. If somebody's pointing a gun at you and you draw your weapon and shoot them, that's still self-defense, because there's a lethal and imminent threat in front of you. If somebody is charging at you with a long sword intending to chop your head off and you pull out your gun and shoot them, that's still self-defense. Just like that scene actually in Indiana Jones, where the guy's swinging his scimitar around and Indiana Jones just pulls out his pistol and shoots him. That guy was going to chop his head off. It's perfectly reasonable to engage lethal force in a situation like that. And I think we get that. I think everybody kind of feels that on a basic level, that Han really wasn't wrong to shoot Greedo. He might be kind of a bad guy in that he's in with the mob. He owes money to some gangster, right? But it's not unreasonable that he would actually defend himself in that situation. There's also just the general idea of him having a different character arc because of that. When we first meet Han Solo, he is not what I would call an evil character. I don't think we really pick up on him as being evil somehow. He's a rogue, which means he's a neutral character for the most part. He's not good or evil. He's not committed to a good cause, but he's certainly not with an evil cause. He is in essence against the Empire, and Greedo kind of describes that. You drop your cargo load at the first sign of Imperial trouble, meaning he's not with the Empire. So he's not with the bad guys. He's with, kind of tied up with some unsavory bad guys, but he's not a bad guy himself. We kind of pick up on that through the dialogue and the initial introduction of Han Solo. We don't really need him to wait for somebody threatening to kill him to then fire upon him for him to engage his lethal force and protect himself. It's just not really necessary. But when we do add that little thing in there, it makes him from an active kind of character, a character who is actively protecting himself, to a character who's passive and is reactive. And that's a big difference. And it's a big difference in how we perceive like the masculinity of the character, how we perceive the competency of the character. We tend to be attracted to men who are active. They are proactive. They are doing things intentionally. They're doing things with intent and with reason, and they're the first one to act. And we tend to have less affection for males who are more passive. They're waiting for something to happen. They're waiting for the other person to shoot first. Could you imagine in that shootout scene with like Doc Holliday and who was it? Was it Curly? In Tombstone, if they had been circling and Doc had waited for the other guy to draw his pistol and shoot first, he'd be dead. The whole point was, I'm going to be the first one to shoot him. Nobody thinks Doc Holliday murdered the other guy in cold blood. So Han Solo did not murder Greedo in cold blood. Greedo was intending to kill him or take him away to his death. So it was reasonable for him to do that. But, having a character that acts proactively, a character that does something to solve a problem, we're attracted to that, whereas we are not as attracted to somebody who acts passively and doesn't do anything. Maybe they act competently in a passive way, but that's not the character, right? Han Solo is a very competent and charismatic character. Having him shoot second just doesn't really fit with his character type. Now, there is a character arc there too, because it's about him going from a neutral and a chaotic character into one that is actually supporting the good guys. He goes from an unaligned character to a character who is good. By the end of the Star Wars movie, the first Star Wars movie, he's leaving with his money to go pay Jabba, and Luke kind of chastises him for that. He's not fighting with the good guys, but then Han Solo does come back to save him at the end and prove his worth, if you will. He proves that he's actually cares about the good things. So that character arc is a little bit muted if he's a passive and too much of a good guy, as some people would think. But I think the main thing is that it changes him into a passive character that's not as attractive as an active character. I think that really, really matters. I'll make another little note here. People have been talking about the addition of McLunky, which was something that I think Sebulba says to Anakin in the first movie. I guess George added this in. I went and checked my Blu-rays, and no, it's not there on the Blu-rays. I have the Blu-rays from 2011, and it's not on those. So they have the conversation. Greedo shoots, and it misses Han's head. It actually looks better, I think. I think they might have done some more alterations, because it looks way better than what they did, where they like cut his head, and he kind of like shifted his head around. It actually looks kind of natural the way it looks now. But he shoots, you see a blaster bolt hit his head, and then you see Han shoot a blaster bolt underneath. And actually the angles don't line up. If you pause the frame, his gun's pointed down and like the blaster bolt's shooting up like this. The angles don't quite work out, but that's what's there on the original Blu-ray when checked. So this thing's added, and again, this goes back to that first reason, like, why are you altering the art after you did it? Why is that an important change? I don't know why. But I can say that it is, it's at that point, it was George's movie. I guess he could make that addition if he really wanted to. I think maybe he wanted to bring in the obviousness that Greedo was going to kill Han Solo right then and there. Make that a very obvious thing rather than Han, maybe the confusion that Greedo was not going to kill Han and Han killed him in cold blood. I don't have that perception from that scene, and I don't know too many other people who actually came away from that scene with that perception. So anyway, that's the total of it. I will make one extra little note. That scene itself kind of makes the scene with him talking to Jabba the Hutt in the special editions redundant. He goes and he talks to Jabba the Hutt after killing Greedo, and then Jabba's kind of okay with it. It doesn't really make any sense. The Jabba scene, I've talked about it before, is probably the worst, and for me, by far the most objectionable thing in the special edition of the original Star Wars movie. But those two scenes don't go well together. So as soon as you remove the Jabba scene, whether George wanted to have it in the original or not, that bar scene has a lot more impact and importance. We do get the idea that, Han is on the run. We have a heightened degree of tension with the inclusion of that scene, that somebody's out to kill Han. He needs to go too. He needs to get off the planet just like Luke does. And to have Jabba show up outside the ship and have this kind of polite conversation with him, all the tone is off with that Jabba scene. I just kind of wanted to put that in there. That bar scene makes the Jabba scene pretty much moot as far as I'm concerned. So as far as storycraft goes, that's really what you're looking at. And the detail that I want to bring to your attention is it changes Han not from a bad guy to a good guy to have him shoot second, but from a passive character from an active character to a passive character, which is something that we don't find attractive in his character. We like that he's a go-getter, he's a bad boy. That's the kind of thing that we like in Han Solo. So thanks so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. New book is called City of Silver. It's been out since November 1st. Check it out. It's what I like to call 310 to Yuma, but fantasy. So it's fantasy, gunpowder fantasy, whatever you want to call it. First of a very long series. I'm hoping to have book number 2 out here pretty soon. I'll have another horror book coming out in December, very early December. So make sure you're on my mailing list, dvspress.com/list. Especially you want to be on that list for the dark times ahead. And one more thing that I do want to bring to your attention, Strange Adventures comic magazine. I do have a story that's featured in this, so if you want to back this Kickstarter project, it's a really cool project, totally done in black and white by Jesse White, who's a very, very talented comic artist. So if you like those old black and white comics like Savage Sword of Conan, you're probably going to like Jesse's execution of this. And one of my stories is in it. So of course you're going to help me if you back this project. But if that's something that you want to see survive, if that's a format that you would like to see exist going forward, then please do consider backing that Kickstarter. Thanks so much. And I'll see you guys next time.